Well, thank you so much for staying with us, and thank you for all of our sponsors. We appreciate all that you do so that we can bring our listeners and all of you information each and every week right here on The Light about gardening and healthful eating. Well, our next question was about container gardening, and actually, this question came up while I was doing the class on Wednesday night, and I was showing a container that you could plant a tomato in, and it had its custom-made tomato cage that fits perfectly right down in it. It's a 16-inch square pot, and it has a square cage that fits perfectly down in it. It's a very nice get-up, and we do plant lots and lots of tomatoes in them. We've already planted them so that we have big tomatoes for all of you that want that jump start in May. But I was also saying in the class that you could plant cucumbers in it. And the question was, how many cucumber plants can you plant in that container? Well, really one is enough. You don't need to plant more than that because a cucumber plant produces lots and lots of cucumbers. So one, and I really like to stick with like a pickler, or make sure that you're going to be dedicated to harvesting your cucumbers when they're smaller and you don't let them get real big, because then that weight will really pull on your cage. So go with a smaller cucumber that's not going to get too large, or harvest when the cucumber is young. But one plant, you might be able to get away with two, putting them in opposite corners. But one plant I think is plenty, and definitely one tomato plant, which that is always a topic of conversation when we get to square foot gardening or in containers. That one little tomato plant that you purchase looks very small when you're planting it in like a 20-inch pot. You're like, oh my gosh, this tiny little plant here, it's going to be lost in this big pot. So that's a couple things that need to go along with that. You shouldn't plant that plant in that huge pot all at once. You should up it. If you're planting in containers, it's best for the plant to take it from the flat, move it into a little bit bigger pot, let it grow into that pot, then take it out of that pot and put it in your larger pot. That root system won't get lost so quickly, and your plant will grow faster if you do it that way. But even though you do that, it's still going to look small when you have it in that large container. So a lot of times people think, well, I can put 2 or 3 in here, and that looks like it'll fill it out much better. But as the plant matures, it will have so much foliage that the plant literally doesn't get any airflow down at the bottom, or any of them in there gets very little airflow. And you'll eventually get blight on that plant because of that lack of airflow. The moisture sits down in there, the air is all stagnant, and so disease starts, and that's how we get blight. So if you want to eliminate or have better luck at not getting blight, don't overplant your tomatoes. Plant them in the corners of your square foot gardening beds, if that's how you're doing it, so that they definitely they won't have anything on those sides. And then leave space on that inside of at least 1 more foot. I like even a little bit more than that. I like every tomato plant to have a minimum of 30 inches. I like 36, but a minimum of 30 inches all the way around it for optimum air circulation. Also, pruning off the bottom leaves of your tomato plants, those bottom limbs, is going to really aid in less problems with blight. And you'll find out that you have much better control of that. Also, in that container, 1 plant. Now, you can plant other things in that container. So if you do have a 20 or 22 or 24-inch pot and you put that 1 tomato plant in the middle and you think it looks very lonely there, yes, it does right now, but you could always add in some radishes, something that stays low, that's not going to cause a lot of air restriction, maybe even a little bit of lettuce, maybe some onions, things like that are going to not interfere with the airflow around the plant, and then you'll feel like you are getting a double bang from that one big pot with only 1 tomato plant in it. And then you can always cage your tomato or stake your tomato, and then everything grows very well together. Those other plants will do just fine with the tomato tone that you're fertilizing with. Remember, in a container, you are going to need to fertilize a little bit more. I've told you this in the past, that those containers, because of being above ground, they get more airflow, and they're going to dry out more quickly. So you're going to have to water more often. And when the more you water, the more the nutrients leach out of that soil. So you are going to want to fertilize on a more regular basis, probably once every 2 to 3 weeks, up until the time you start to see fruit, and then you'll want to go ahead and stop. You don't want to keep on fertilizing, because that additional nitrogen at that time sometimes will make your plant grow really big, and you won't get as much harvest. And when the fruit starts, you want to make sure that you are getting optimum fruit production. You really don't care if your plant grows anymore. Some people love, I had a 10-foot tall tomato plant. And how many tomatoes did you get off of it? Because ultimately, that's why you grew the tomato plant, so that you got tomatoes off of it. And it doesn't matter that it's 10 feet tall if you only got 2 tomatoes. It would be more optimal to have a 6-foot tomato plant or even a 5-foot tomato plant and get 25 or 30 tomatoes off of it. That's what we're all going to shoot for. So that's going to be ideal for that. Now, we also did talk about reduce, reuse, recycle in our class the other night. And we're all about using less. And so our topic, or our point of discussion for reduce, was to reduce emissions and the carbon footprint, is to grow your own strawberries, grow your own blueberries, or buy them locally, and buy enough that you can freeze them or preserve them, so that during the winter you don't need to go buy fresh blueberries or fresh strawberries, because you know where those ones come from. In the middle of the winter, strawberries are only growing in California or Florida, and that is a huge carbon footprint getting them to us here in Ohio. So we can really reduce that carbon footprint by planting more of our own and preserving them ourselves, and then realizing in our head we do not need a fresh strawberry in January. We have some in the freezer. And we can use those ones in our recipes, in our smoothies, in our oatmeal. We can use those fresh berries that we grew ourselves and that are in the freezer, instead of buying them fresh at the grocery store. Now, I know every once in a while something comes up. You might want chocolate-covered strawberries to give to someone on Valentine's Day, and you need that fresh strawberry. There's always exceptions, but it's not something that I really think that we should do all the time. Then for the thing of reuse, we used our furnace, for example, because our furnace that we heat our greenhouse with uses waste motor oil. So to reuse that motor oil that needs to be drained out when you have your oil changed, we use that type of oil, or oil from fryers. So if you have a turkey fryer or even a deep fryer, you can bring all of that oil to us, and we are going to reuse it in a furnace that we heat greenhouses with. So it's a very clean heat. Actually, the furnace itself is called a clean burn, but we can use that waste motor oil. We can also use waste hydraulic fluid and brake fluid and transmission fluid and power steering fluid. So if you have any of those things, you can bring them over to the greenhouse, and we will reuse those old dirty fluids in our furnace, and that is going to save them from ending up somewhere where we don't want them to be. And recycle. So many things can be recycled. Remember your plastic bottles. You want to make sure that you are, not throwing them out your windows. Please, please, please. When I go up to a stop sign and I see plastic bottles or bags from a fast food place, I just want to scream. Remember, those things can just about all be recycled in some way, shape, or form. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that to save our environment for our children and our grandchildren. And then the greatest form of recycling. And as we end April, this is our last show of April. April is Organ Donation Awareness Month. And for those of you that don't know, 15 years ago, my husband was killed in an accident. and they actually were able to keep him alive long enough. He was brain dead, but they were able to keep his body alive long enough because the accident happened on a Saturday night, till Monday when an organ donation doctor team was able to harvest his organs. So, organ donation is the greatest form of recycling. If you do not have it on your driver's license, you should make sure when you renew that you do. But also more important than that is that your loved ones, your next of kin that would make that decision upon your death, because even if you have it on your driver's license and you're in an accident and you're unconscious, your spouse, your children will make that decision if your organs are donated or not, even if it is a yes on your driver's license. So make sure that they know about that and your wishes to do so. Because remember, when you die, you do not need anything from this physical body. You are going to get all new as soon as you get to heaven. So give what you have here on earth to someone else that will be staying here so that they can see again. I remember telling the doctors when they asked me if I wanted to give my husband's eyes, I said, "Oh, you won't be able to do that. He had eye surgery, and I wouldn't think that you would be able to use his eyes." And they said, "Oh my, that's wonderful. He probably, after his LASIK surgery, had 20/20 vision." And I said, "Yes, he did. It was miraculous. My husband was practically blind, and he was able to see again without glasses at all." And they said, yes, that was repaired. And so his eyes are great. And they were able to give his eyes to someone else so that they could see. And that is such a gift. But when people ask me what is the greatest form of recycling, I always tell them, because I throw that out there all the time. Do you know what the greatest form of recycling is? And organ donation is definitely the greatest form of recycling. So please, please make this something that you make everyone aware of, that you want your organs to be given to someone, if they are available, to someone that can use them. Thank you all so much for being with us for our last show in April. We'll be back next week as May kicks off our crazy busy month of May. We invite all of you to come out and see us at the store to get all of your vegetable and flowering plants, landscape plants that are due in next week. We're very excited about that. So come on out and see us at 5828 Columbus Road, right there on the corner of Columbus Road and Broadway. And y'all have a blessed week.